I think it's brilliant. Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. If we haven't met before, I'm practicing professional astrologer Stormie Grace. I'm an evolutionary and a humanistic astrologer, and with me I have got the absolute most. Thank you. Let me just say thank you before I even introduce you. Thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure,
This is
really.
Andrea Michelle, everyone. Oh my gosh. And she's just being all Venusian. And I love what you put out and that you just emanate it like powerful, deep Venus energy. So you were an easy thought to invite here to talk about this. So thank you for that.
Well, it's a pleasure from one Venusian to another. It's really receiving your invitation was just wonderful. Thank you, Stormy, for having me. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And you guys, we're going to do some talk today. We are getting ready for the Venus retrograde that is coming into Aries here, and we are already in the pre-retrograde shadow time. So there is this real call to the attention of not only Venus, but the ideas and concepts of femininity, the essence of femininity, which is the energy that Venus carries. And we live in a world that I think often misinterprets femininity, right? It just reduces it sometimes to these aesthetics and it's just soft or it's, compliant, these kinds of words. But I think that it's more vast. Femininity, true femininity I think is really vast. It's creation, it's destruction, it's renewal, it's deep wisdom found in the body, found in the rhythms that we live and move within the world. And in those cycles, I think when we can tap into our femininity, those cycles really guide us. And we just don't have a planet that I think speaks to that powerful dance as much as Venus does.
Mhm.
So we are going to talk about some concepts today. How does Venus move through her cycle? Morning star, evening star. What does it look like, feel like when Venus is in the position of that underworld energy? And then how can we work with these deeper layers? Because Venus is an outward expression of some other things that we have that live more deeply, particularly in the sacred pelvic bowl, right? In those hips, in the tops of your thighs, and all of these energies that can just really get compacted and put layers upon layers, blocking you from your majesty, your creativity, knowing what's really your desire, your inner safety. So, Andrea and Michelle is going to take us through some Venus cycle, and we are going to talk about the deeper goddesses that help us rebirth or transform from these deeper layers. So hopefully you are ready to get into all of that. And we're going to have a download that's available for you as well. So you'll be able to click in the description box down below to get that. Let's start first, just in a really general way, Andrea, with what does Venus retrograde symbolize to you as we're going to be considering it here in 2025 through Aries?
Awesome. So, in contrast to the outer planets like Mars and the asteroids and so on, Venus and Mercury, when they retrograde, they station retrograde as evening stars. So there's a whole context of retrogradation that is included when one of them, let's say Venus, stations retrograde. So she's moving from the end of one cycle into the beginning of another. So there's this sense of carrying something forward from the past, you could say, from one place into another, carrying the essence of something as a form of continuation. So with this Venus, when she stations retrograde, she is bringing in the energies of and assimilating the energies of the Leo Venus cycle, bringing the essence forward. And then when she has her interior conjunction with the sun, which is when she's retrograde and meets with the sun, she lets everything go, and whatever is left, that's what she carries forward. And now she's suddenly in a new cycle. So there is this very strong essence, just which is the feminine, of release, of what we can assimilate. We assimilate in the retrograde period. We integrate with us. We receive, right? Because Venus is the feminine, representing our capacity to receive. So there's an even more specific intention to receive when the planet of interiority is already is interior even more through the retrogradation process. So it's bringing in what we've learned, embodying it, so that we can then release and be prepared for what's coming. We don't have to worry about what we're taking with us. It's already happened and we're in a new cycle. And with Aries, I don't want to get complex, but there are a couple of other bodies that are supporting Aries, Venus in the Aries cycle.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Let's
And
pour into it because there is a lot to see here, right? To
yeah,
understand the way that you're talking about it. I just hold this Venus, like this picture of all of us in this space right now, kind of in this priestess phase, where it is this real learning that we have received something we are not chasing. We are to practice the receptivity, but without overexerting ourselves. But who
beautiful.
are the other players? Yes, please bring those in.
Yes, I love that. So it's by something called declination, which is a measurement of planets above or below the celestial equator, which is the Earth's equator projected into space. So it's not going to be evident by longitude, but both Chiron and Pallas Athena are what I call kind of the co-pilots supporting Venus in this new cycle. And Pallas Athena especially she is about bringing back acknowledging our feminine power. She, to me, represents the bridging of all three centers of intelligence, the head, the heart, and the hara. Because what's interesting in the Pallas Athena myth, even though it's accentuated that she was born of her father's head, she was still gestating in her mother Metis because Jupiter, Zeus, had swallowed Metis. So Metis was still alive in his gut. So she was still, even though she was outwardly born from her father's head, she still has access to Metis, which means wise counsel in the gut. So I associate Pallas Athena very much with bridging all the three main centers of intelligence, because the hara is the center of power, the heart is the center, you could say, of love, and the head is the center of wisdom. So those three together is how we sit in our feminine power when we have some relationship with each of those. Doesn't matter whether it's perfect or not, we're always a work in progress, but some sort of communion, you could say, with those three centers. To me, that's what Pallas Athena represents. And there's something about Venus and Aries with Chiron there, which is about getting back to the primal instinct of the feminine. You know, like you beautifully said, what we've been contorted in terms of how we see the feminine. And it's been through a patriarchal lens, which is also part of what Pallas Athena can represent. So this Aries Venus cycle, close to the Aries point, it's like we're starting fresh. What does the feminine actually mean from the ground up, Aries? What is the fundamental instinct of the feminine? And it's to connect, it's to receive, it's to find balance within an imbalanced world, whether that be inner world. You know, it's not about, you know, getting to a sense of peace where there's nothing that's destructive, because that's idealism and that's never possible, because there's always the agency of chaos and Mars. But how do we get to a point where we can be comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Mhm.
And that to me is part of the Venusian ideal, in the sense of when we're embodied and we have a relationship with those three centers, thanks to the support of Pallas Athena, and with Chiron there, returning us back to where we have split from our instinctual wisdom, we get a new sense, a vital, embodied, and visceral Aries sense of what it is to be feminine, both for women and men.
Yeah, I absolutely think it's beautiful. And with Chiron and Aries, one of the things that I've really been watching for people, just in general, as it's been dancing through this Aries place, is the wound of the identity in general. Whatever it has been, as Chiron has continued to dance forward and backwards, we are solidly where Chiron's at right now, working with new glasses, essentially, right? Like a knowing that, yeah, this is still a wound. The wound of my identity in some way is still a wound, but I have a lot of healing. So I have a lot of perspective actually now to bring to the table. So I feel like it adds this little extra oomph
Yes.
to the Venusian power. And like you're saying, it's like in Aries, Aries says, I have a right to be here, damn it. I have a right
Right.
to be what I
Right.
am, damn it. Right. And so it's
Yeah.
a very, like, it is that return to what is the natural instinct. And I think understanding of what is femininity, wherever it lives, what is it? How does it move? How does it breathe? How do you work with it? Like you're
Beautiful.
saying, a lot of this contorting, and depending on where this is happening in different areas of the chart, we're still, I think, all working through the societal views wherever they have been on what that is, and that too includes outside of the US and these other things. But what is this, and how do we see it with these new healed eyes where there used to be a different wound? The other thing I just want to say is I think that Chiron's support here helps to move that energy in a place where Venus realizes she's not a hustle hard energy. There's no real value in fighting for the
Mhm.
self-worth. It is a surrender to a deep trust and a deep knowing. And in that flow, that ease, that intuitive connection shows up in how we carry ourselves. But it comes from the center, the place in the body, those hips, that pelvic bowl, that's where we create the life that we get to live, damn it. You
Damn it.
know? And
I
so
love that very much.
I think
I,
it's big.
it's big, and they're both mentors too. Pallas Athena and Chiron are mentors, and they're about self mastery. So
Yeah.
this is a beautiful energy of taking back ownership for my choices, what I can do with humility, what I'm not available for yet. This doesn't mean I'm deficient. It just means I'm available for more honesty around what I can and cannot do. I won't overpromise. I won't underdeliver. I can do only the best I can. And
Mhm.
that's self-mastery.
Yeah, it's a brilliant thing. I've just been doing a lot of Venus talks here recently, and in the middle of a talk, it really just occurred to me what and how Venus works. And Venus, like in the hips, is like I point my hips at it, and then it comes to me. When
Mm,
I'm clear, it works that quickly. I mean, it was just shown so quickly. And so I think, as we're going through this retrograde, this is something that we can all stop and just have a moment of consideration about what are you pointing your hips at? And why are you pointing your hips over there? Right? Like, what is it? Because when I point my hips at something and I use that Venus energy and just call it, if the fire's on and I'm in alignment with how I am allowing that to move through me, there's a lot to be said for it. And when it's a little off, that's great because I know that I still have a little wound or a little adjustment
adjustment, exactly.
that
Right.
can be made here,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is
Ah,
wild.
yes. Right. Right.
What a whole wild thing. So that's how we're gonna see it. But let's talk just for a second, and just in case people don't know it, but what is it like? What are we looking for when Venus is in morning star position?
When Venus is a morning star, she is rising before the sun. So she is the first to be visible and in the pre-dawn hours. And over the course of just like 2 months or so, she becomes more and more visible. So you'll see her before the sunrise increasingly over the time of the morning star period till she reaches her maximum morning brightness where you can't miss her. Like she's just looks like a star. If you're up before dawn and you just see this bright being in the sky. And what's so interesting is this is an kind of an I, me, mine space of Venus. This is when a planet is before the sun, there is already this sort of Aryan energy to it because it's an assertion. It's like a breaking free from the solar force, but supported by the solar force to break free. So it's this impulse of discovering one's own effect on the world. That is the essence of a morning star planet. And for Venus, it's very much, how do I relate with the world? How do I relate with my values? How am I in relationship at all with my values? How much or how little am I in relationship with my relationship style, my needs? Are they emotional? Or are they more mental? Or are they more somatic? Like just discovering one's own unique Venus style, which of course by sign, house, and aspect in the chart really helps to identify that. So this is the feminine that is really working her, it's still feminine, but working more of her agency, more of her choice, more of her explorative side on
Yeah.
her own terms.
Yeah, because it's like, because Venus is an attracting in energy. If you don't know, if we are not clear on what we desire to call to us, if there is not some kind of solidarity happening there, that awakening in the bowl and the fire, the setting of boundaries, the clarity, right? We can't boldly in Aries say, I want that, come to me. We
Right.
cannot do that. It is, and unapologetically, this is Aries energy. It's not like I get to live, damn it, if you think so, right? There's no apology to what I'm calling to me because I am clear. And so I
Mhm.
am actively pointing at what I desire. And that is just a brilliant and beautiful thing. It's very
Right.
bold. I don't know if you can agree with this or what your experience is with this, but especially in going through the Venus Reset program and looking at where energies are stuck in our bowl, one of the things I experienced going through my own program is that where I had energy that was stuck in this like masculine overdrive, or the having to do without the feeling, or having to have more clarity, I could feel where anger and
Mhm.
burnout and tension were literally sitting just shrouded in that
Yes.
bowl and over my hips, and you know, and so
Yes.
in this morning star energy, it's like, what could you call to you
Mhm.
if you were clear here?
Yes. I love that. It's such a especially with Chiron there,
Mm,
there is this sense of, well, I love what you said about seeing, because of course Aries relates to the head, which relates to the
yeah.
eyes. So Chiron and Aries can be like, like you said, like wearing the wrong prescription glasses or something, or seeing the world through a specific lens of woundedness or victimization. And so there is something about this Venus Aries with Chiron, and if we're going to work in Pallas Athena again here, this sense of, especially with Chiron, kindness with ourselves, that it's okay to be angry. It's okay to let any stored up resentment or anger be released. But if we do
Mhm.
it, if we're looking at the lens of self mastery, how do I do it within a container that's healthy? How do I do it in a way that's self responsible, that acknowledges my need to very humanly express my anger? Because anger is the doorway into vitality. It's the doorway into more of my life force. So anger in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's when it's unconscious or impulsive Aries rather than directed and clear. So it's just working with those energies without making those the energy of anger, or transmuting or metabolizing resentment, like you were saying, in a way that's just supporting my natural vitality to emerge. And that can look however it looks for people. It could be, whether it be kickboxing, or it be where you, I don't know, you can journal too. That might be something, but there's always something physical with Aries, and bringing in our physicality that would be really, really supportive. However that looks, whether it's, cardio, whether it's dance.
Mhm.
Dance is a beautiful Venusian expression of, or martial arts even, or qigong, or whatever it might be, but something about moving the energy so that it's supporting you to become more vital and not just diffusing. And with Pallas Athena, there's also, because she's the goddess of social justice. So where is fighting a system actually continuing to perpetuate the system? And how do
Absolutely.
we really, again, see with new eyes that I'm really fighting myself? So when I am being gentle, Chiron, in my self-mastery and using my vitality, my anger, to support my deepest, most vulnerable human expression of my feminine on the earth, I am changing the course of my history and what's possible for all of us when I'm taking that kind of level of ownership with humility and, again, responsibility and mastery.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in that Aries energy, so much like you're saying, being physical, it begs the question of when is the last time I just enjoyed my body? When is the last
Yes.
time I just
Yes.
was connected to pleasure and softness and safety and the intimacy of my own being,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not looking for it to come from anybody else or anything else, but this does from that bowl during this retrograde, we're going to consider things in that pelvic space and around this identity, that womb space of where am I holding a generational womb, right?
Right.
Where is that? Where am I holding on to cultural programming
Mm.
that just doesn't work anymore? Maybe it never did, but certainly now there's an awareness to it. Where do I have emotional stagnation?
Yes.
So, and in any of these things, if you're listening and you're like, what are they talking about? Listen, what we're saying is if you have these places where you feel disconnected at this point in your life from ease, from pleasure, from play, if you're feeling depleted, like your creative blocks are at an all-time high, Venus retrograde in Aries, I think, is a time where some of that ego of it's happening to me, not
Right.
coming from me,
Right.
does start to get stripped away layer by layer so that we can see the truth of what is your being? Who is your being? But again, we're coming at this with fresh eyes. So I don't think that we have to fight the awakenings that are coming to us, you know?
This is
But
what I love about what you're bringing, Stormy, is like, and I've just been discovering this on my own through of all things horses, which is another thing, but that healing and holding ourselves does not have to be difficult, that it doesn't have to be, intense, that it doesn't have to be a challenge that we have to overcome. I love the space you hold, especially with the Venus reset around where can I allow it to be easeful? Where can I allow healing, Chiron, to be something that I'm choosing moment by moment in how present I can be, how much I'm available to see with new eyes, like you said, where I'm catching myself in victimization, something happening to me, and where I can bring it back, even though it doesn't necessarily feel good initially, to, wow, I'm really clearing out collective victimization and my own personal victimization every time I gently, with kindness, just bring it back to me, especially during the retrograde period, with love. Which doesn't mean I'm taking on everything in my environment that's wrong or wounded or whatever. It's just where can I just be with me and quiet and receive what is mine to be received. That's all I need to do. So that's one of the reasons why when I was watching your prior videos and just what you're bringing in, I feel that that is the way to healing. Venus with Chiron, feminine mode of healing, bringing that back newly from what's old is new again, right? So yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I, I love it. Thank you for saying that. And thank you for sharing that because it really is, I think, a principle, at least in the United States for sure, right? I can speak to that having lived that dynamic. And then being here in Europe, where I see the dynamic reflected a bit differently, right? So I can speak to the fact that the healing, we have to look at what is when I am stripped down, Aries, when I am stripped down to my core essence, who am I without the roles, without the titles? What value do I carry in the world if I'm not having children? If I do have, like, who am I on my own? Right?
Right.
And that can be easily done. It's a gentle conversation. And I do think that Venus's dip back into Pisces there at the end is an invitation for that real forgiveness that you're talking about.
Totally.
Like,
Mhm.
you did the best that you could. You have lived this the best that you can. But what goes into Pisces, it's the great womb Everything is
Right.
transmuted into what it needs to be next. But there gets to be, before that, before we come back into Pisces in those first 10 degrees of Aries, the pausing to reflect about how my internal blockages with Venus are reflecting the
Yes.
blockages in my external life as well. And that stored resentment, that unprocessed emotion, that past lover, right? Like we know today scientifically, if you have had someone in your body, whether that be, however people got into your body, that
Right.
those cells can stay in your body, right?
Yeah.
So has there been a conscious sense of processing even these things out? It's such a Velcro place, that
Yes.
bowl, I think, especially if it's built up over time. But we have an opportunity here during the retrograde to just do some intentional cleaning out, hand it back to let the universe do the heavy lifting and restore
Mhm.
us to the love and the pleasure and the abundance
Mm.
easily, easily.
Beautiful. Getting back to, because I didn't actually finish the whole morning star period because it culminates with her high and bright, but then over the course of the morning star period, then she starts to get further and further away from Earth, right? And then she meets up with the moon once a month. So this is Inanna surrendering uh, her attachments. And what's interesting, I feel too, about the starting off with Aries Venus and then her heliacal rise in Pisces. The Aries portion is how much have I learned to stay with me in my experience and clear so that when she's in Pisces, I don't just lose myself again. Like,
Yeah,
how do I keep a sense of my center and my being within the collective? So, how am I both and? How am I a differentiated being and part of the strata of all that is? And that's the dance. And we don't have to get it perfect. And so, the surrendering period where she becomes lower and lower and she's getting further and further from Earth on her way toward her superior conjunction with the sun, right? When she's farthest from Earth, this is the opportunity to gently, and this is how much we're loved, right? We don't have to do it all at once. It's not a one-shot deal. We get 5.5 months of Venus with the moon, with this heavily balsamic moon. So it's the end of the moon cycle when she's in the morning star period. So it's just like this ability to just practice letting go, shedding whatever doesn't serve. And we can do that intentionally whenever Venus meets up with the moon, whatever sign. So there's this beautiful, gentle sloughing off, which is also part of it. So where have I become too attached with what I value or my beliefs or my relationships or
yeah,
even my somatic experiences? Where am I keeping myself from greater and greater experience of what my true safety is, which only letting go of the surface layer of safety, I wouldn't know unless I were available to let go and discover, oh, wow, my capacity to let go, which is the natural way of things, is much deeper than I thought. So that whole 5.5 or so month period where she is becoming lower and lower in the sky again and moving further and further from Earth is that part of us that's being pulled away from our attachments to experience ourselves more clearly and nakedly.
yeah.
Because even though she will be in different signs, it's still an Aries Venus cycle. So it's still about what's primal, what's naked, who am I when everything is gone?
Mhm.
Where am I still situated in me?
So it's just this, when we're talking about Venus and how she's moving, it's really this beautiful place of the morning star, the evening star kind of movement. And we're going to show you guys a slide of what this looks like, but essentially is the space in our deepest and most intimate values of where we get stripped down and then built back up, right? Is really offering that rebirth. And this time it's through that fire transformation, right?
Mm-hmm.
That very
Mm-hmm.
Aries kind of movement, but well, even, just in relation to the sun, like a fire transformation, right? Because like you said, it bursts out, she bursts out then, heralding the new story of value before the sun.
Right. I
Wow,
love it.
that's powerful when we stop and we think about that, you know,
Yes.
and we think about that because during Venus's retrograde, she'll be in conversation with Pluto as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that to me is such an unwinding for feminine energy in this new world that's being formed, and getting to go back into it and look at what is my relationship with rest. What was I told by a world would make me valuable or successful? And maybe I don't believe that anymore. Maybe that's not in an alignment with me anymore. And these are, when we say it here, it's nice when we're having a chat about it. But when we're alone with that question, like I'm not getting emotional thinking about it, that some of these things were just not true for me. And what is that? Because I have made decisions out of a Venusian layer of a certain set of values, right? That may or may not align with where I'm at today. So if you're, as you are listening, how does that question hit you? How does that thought hit you? The world told me if I did this, I wore this, I was this, I looked like this, then I would be valuable. And today, maybe life has not shaped up like that for you, or you just don't believe it anymore. That's a very Venusian concept.
Yes, I love that. It's so, and there's so much Eris, powerful Eris in this cycle as well.
Mm.
And she is very much about the freedom. She's got this anarchic quality to it, but it's not anarchy for its own sake. I mean, it is at a certain level of consciousness, but ultimately it's about breaking out of conditioned constraints that tell me who I am at the expense of my own freedom to know and viscerally be connected to the truth of who I am. So it speaks to a lot of what you're saying there. And I won't go too much into Eris now, but there's something also about this Venus cycle, Stormy, from what you're saying, and that's been coming to me, is like complexity arising from simplicity. Like simplicity, humility, Chiron, is the place from which complexity doesn't feel like chaos. We can see more clearly that the things that seemed chaotic was only chaotic because we didn't have a relationship with this and that and this and that. But when we allow the simplicity of our hearts, of our power, of our womb, of our heads to merge and come together, we can see through the chaos into the complexity, and we can feel it. And then we know how to respond, what's too complicated and what's organically arising. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
a
Well, there's a lot to unpack, and you guys, hopefully you've checked out the Venus retrograde video that was done for you in general, so you can also see the chart and see what's happening as Venus is actually moving through the retrograde. But Andrea, I want to just give you some space here. I would love to hear more about how you're using the goddesses. In particular, we've spoken quite a bit about Paulus, and then you talked about Eris over here. This has my attention fully because all of us can grab our charts and say,
yes.
where is this happening in my chart, first of all, by degree and house, but also where is my Paulus? Where's my Eris in my chart, and how do they function in relation to the deeper meat of my Venusian expression? So take us there if you'd like.
Thank you, Stormy. Yeah, so I'm gonna share my screen, and the first thing I started at this, but I want to go back here. So again, as Stormy was saying, you'll get this download. So I'm not going to go through all of the things here, except to just introduce why I work, you could say, with what I call the archaic feminine. Archaic means ancient. There's also an implication of before the written word. So it's kind of like has this oral tradition, almost Orphic kind of feel to it, which is very feminine because it's not codified and written. It's told from person to person, and each person's wisdom infuses the story. So there's this almost like this vital essence that gets lost in the written word sometimes, that's implied in archaic. It's what we are before we are formed. And so this idea of the archaic feminine, these asteroids, namely Pallas Athena, Juno, Vesta, and then there's the dwarf planets Ceres and Eris, all of them except for Eris are in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. So I see them as midwives between our personal desires and our social responsibility, or our social, how we interact in the social realm. So I feel that they help birth us beyond just my own growth and my own purpose, but how is that interrelated with our unique set of gifts for the collective? It's always this conversation, right? So these goddesses are naked to the eye. And except for Vesta, again, under the right conditions, she's the brightest one of these asteroids. So it really brings us back to the feminine, which is mystery, right? The mystery, we can't see it in the Eleusinian mystery that Demeter, Ceres initiated. You see initiates in all the images with blindfolds on, which is a metaphor for being willing to go into the unknown. Like you said, Stormie, it's like, can we go without our eyes? Can we trust ourselves beneath what we can see? And so this is what forming a relationship with these goddesses, I feel, in my experience, shows is a capacity to trust in the deep feminine mystery. And it becomes a somatic orientation. It becomes a somatic refuge in us when we cultivate this relationship with the feminine in this very deeply feeling somatic way.
This is
So sorry, go
wow. I'm just taking it in. I mean, just even the phrase that you're using is so beautiful, archaic, feminine. That's older than language.
Yes, exactly.
That is, I mean, it's just I just see the vision and think, this energy burns, it births, it sings life into our bones. It's a really kind of like the primordial,
Yes,
you
soup.
know?
Yes.
And I thank you for bringing this because it's to me also this reminder in this really old mysterious way that Venus is not just Aphrodite, not just the lover, not just the muse, but in the Anana, right? Like going to hell and back if we need
That's
to,
right.
Ishtar, breaking down the gates, creating a storm. It's
Yes.
like wisdom that is in our bones and our blood. We know this,
That
but we
is
have
so.
to
Yep.
have a burn away.
Yes. Bones. I love that you mentioned that because there's a lot that's happening in Capricorn with where, and I won't go into this here, but there's been a lot of initiating of new cycles in Capricorn with some of these asteroid goddesses, and this idea of coming back to the bones, exactly, the foundation. Capricorn wisdom as the elder, as the grandmother, this archaic feminine wisdom. And I love that you had said that about in Nana because and with Chiron, especially here in the, as we've been talking about, Enki in the larger Nana myth, it was Enki who was her, I think her brother, who was the first to go and meet Ereshkigal, which I correlate with Eris. He went down and lost and like very shamanically was torn apart and came back. So it was the masculine Aries that is the initiator. It's very interesting to consider the masculine being the most vulnerable because if you think about it, Aries is leaving what it knows, the comfort of Pisces, right? This kind of like, oh, who would want to leave that, right? But it takes a lot of heart and courage to leave what I know to explore something new. So this idea of Enki, which is a very Chironic figure, because it was when Inanna was down with the Ereshkigal hanging on the meat hook that Enki sent help to Inanna. So there's this sense of the masculine and feminine co-creating, working together. And it dispels this idea that the feminine is empowered without the masculine, or the
Right.
masculine is, can be on its own without the feminine. And so
Absolutely.
Eris carries that. Yeah.
It's beautiful. And with Pluto in Aquarius, we come into a cycle now where we are contained in a masculine energy. So this is where feminine energy can bloom and can heal because without the space of masculine energy. Feminine energy has nothing to bounce off of. And what I
Right.
do think that we can see is that some of what we saw, particularly towards the end of the Pluto Capricorn time as well, is too much femininity will infantilize masculinity,
Yes.
and it will just overpower. And so then it actually starts to move in more masculinity,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I think we're going to see this massive healing, like you're saying, as we're in this transformation now of a new container, but it does require the feminine energy do the healing on femininity,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Exactly.
To be called back. I heard this quote and I just cannot remember where I heard it, but it said, the mind and the body are one, and to be strong, you have to be wise, but to be wise, feminine energy has to remember.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is like, as you're talking through this, I'm just going, oh my gosh, we're gonna be okay, guys. You know,
Right.
we're gonna be okay.
I love it. I love it. That's great.
Yes, sorry, I don't want to pull us off track, but
No,
so
no.
yes, vested the mystery.
Yes, exactly. And Venus is the way I see Venus in the chart is she is the essence of our feminine qualities. And so these goddesses are facets or fractals or forms of the feminine. And they are bringing in the ancient, they're revitalizing that Venusian, like beneath just our preferences and our relationship styles and our values and our aesthetics, which is fine and that's all true, but what is beneath that? And they are supporting. And so Venus is the demonstrable, being visible for most of her cycle, right? The demonstrable feminine is engaged and infused and informed by this beautiful, mysterious, but very felt sense of our grounding in our power. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
I'll
I would just, I would love is, as we have this slide up, curiosity is killing me is really what it is, about, because Ceres in this chart, how is this a facet
oh,
of
wow.
our learning, of our healing that Venus is going to speak to? I know we're going to get to Aries, but
Mhm.
how is this showing up for us? We can look to our charts and see that.
How does Ceres, how is she supporting in general, the feminine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. She's the big mother. She is the dwarf planet. She is the one who demoted Pluto from planet to dwarf planet because I know she put Pluto in his place, which of course became her brother-in-law, but also was her brother, and is the father of her daughter. No, Jupiter was. Anyway, it just, all of that incest in the Greek pantheon. But to me, that just shows the interrelatedness of all of us. Like anyway. So Ceres, Demeter, she's the one, as we remember, lost her daughter Persephone or was taken into the underworld. And now, for me, that myth, the idea of the rape of Persephone or being taken without her will, to me is representative of the ego being attached to a certain way of being and forgetting that initiation is an important part of what it is to be human. So it seemed like it was horrible for Persephone, but that's the recognition of the ego. And of course, when we're talking about the Greek myths, or any myth, I would say, whoever the protagonist is, and it's called the hymn to Demeter, not the hymn to Persephone, it's the hymn to Demeter, which is the Greek name for Ceres, that every character in that myth is a facet of the protagonist. So Persephone represents the aspect of Ceres that is sort of naive, that everything is always going to be, in this place of perfection and idealism. But the truth is, Pluto, especially as its modern ruler of Scorpio, is like the sexual initiation, the initiation from the maiden to the mother, the maiden to womanhood that is resisting the ego resists in a sense, right? Because it means change. But
Yeah.
change is a part of our true nature. So for me, when Demeter goes through her grieving process, and she went through it very messy. She raged and she was resentful and she cast the entire earth in winter, right? She can represent in the chart where we are, misery loves company, or if I'm going to be miserable, everybody in my environment is going to have to be miserable, right?
Yeah.
So, but she goes through it. She lets it all go. Like we were talking about earlier about feeling where the resentment lives, feeling it and letting it come out in a healthy way fuels our vitality. It changes the energy from one of repression
Mm.
to one of openness and transparency, which releases it to move and flow more freely, to become more creative. So Demeter is the process of surrendering to what is inevitable, to discover more of where we have ourselves at a deeper layer, beneath the ego, beneath the victimization of why is this happening to me, to sink into and soften into that is to discover, first of all, that's a choice to begin to own where my power really lives. And then it allows the power to show up. And the beautiful thing about Capricorn and the wisdom of Capricorn is, in a sense, reclaiming time as an ally rather than an enemy. Because Capricorn and Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, is very intimate with cycles, just as Demeter is, that things come back around, that the illusion of linearity is part of the patriarchal paradigm that we're here to lose. But nature is constantly showing us that life is cyclical, that we're always going to come back around to things. And so that's another thing that Demeter, in her, at the base of her grief, and it's joy, it's laughter that brings her out of her funk, which is very, very interesting. In different myths, it's by different people, but either it's Pan in the Arcadian myth, or it's I think it's Bauba or something. She's this hag that shows up and just like her eyes are like vaginas, or and she like lifts up her skirt and she like totally shocks Demeter into just laughing. So it's getting us out of this seriousness and into more of like the lightheartedness that always holds us. So Demeter is this sense of letting go and surrendering in order to feel what we can never be lost.
Yeah. Wow. So what I'm hearing is like, first of all, going to looking at Ceres in this particular retrograde, but even going to our chart and looking at in the Ceres energy where there is a grief around womanhood, motherhood, any of these kinds of things, but that is really a teacher that all loss is transformation,
Yes.
hands down. But thinking about that at this particular retrograde, I think taking it to the pelvic bowl and looking at it through this lens and that Capricorn and the Aquarius. Now it's like this is an opportunity to release what has been carried for generations. You
Yeah.
know, the grief of mothers, mothering, grandmothers, women before you in the Venus Reset program, we take it back to Gaia. We take it
Mm-hmm.
back to the original energy, right?
Yes.
So that raw truth can kind of emerge and the transformation of the let go, let go, let go, like you're saying, can happen in a way that is not as forceful as maybe
Right.
what put the signature there.
Exactly. Beautiful. I mean, she is an, I mean, there was a Greek goddess named Gaia, which was separate, but Demeter and Ceres is intimate with the cycles of nature. And when we really embody, the solar, when we allow the solar force, which is nurturing, which is our vitality, it is our already awakened consciousness, it is love to hold us in the earth, which the earth receives every day. When we allow our bodies to be, which are extensions of the earth, to mirror and be grounded in the earth to support us, then, like you said beautifully, release and surrender can happen more easily, more naturally. We can feel the truth and the value speaking of value of it. So it helps us reorient to what we value.
Yeah. And I'm just having this vision too of like thinking about these questions in a practical way, like, in how how I mother, how I was mothered, the signals that I've had around mothering or being a woman or being a value. How am I bringing a misery loves company vibe to my life? And it is really based out of something super old, right? Where is it that I see a woman dancing and shaking her hips or dressed a certain way, or where do I even outpour that kind of energy into the world? And it's just something for me to look at. And as we come through the Venus retrograde now, we get this opportunity to come to the other side, like having burned with that flame a little bit and move with more grace,
Yes.
wiser, softer, stronger, not chasing, truly
Mm.
committed. Right? Like
Yes.
these are
Yes. And
massive concepts.
in it for the long haul, which is the wisdom of Capricorn, recognizing, having that flame of like my devotion to truth, to being more me without the confines of societal restrictions. That's what leads me. That's what keeps me going. Even when more obstacles come, I start to see obstacles as another form of initiation, as another opportunity to get even deeper into how much love can I release and carry and beam out and receive and share in the world.
Absolutely brilliant. And like in the sacred bowl, we know that the bowl has to be emptied before
Mm-hmm.
it can be refilled, right? We watch that cycle every month. Every month, the bowl has to
Yeah.
be emptied before it's refilled. And so this is just more of that. I think I took us off track. I was like so fascinated by this, but I don't want to miss out on Eris because Eris is really powerful.
Oh my gosh.
And so how does Eris play into our story now? We're kind of we're getting a
Yeah.
little bit deeper before we've even gotten over here to Juno and made it to the other
Yeah.
side.
No, that's fine. But Eris is, so she moves so slowly. Her orbit is like 500 and something years, and she's got a very eccentric, she's at 44 degrees of tilt from the sun, from our orbit, from the ecliptic. So she's again erratic, eccentric. She's the goddess of discord and chaos, supposedly. But again, things are chaotic and discordant when we are not coming from simplicity to
Mhm.
hold complexity. So Eris is going to be the sign of Aries for everybody alive today. She, for me, her energy is very ereshkigal because she's feminine, but she's in Aries. So again, she's the merging of this masculine and feminine. What's what? Like it's hard to distinguish with Aries, which is more prominent in some ways. I mean, she has this deeply fierce energy of desire for freedom through wholeness. And in order to break out of the confusion, the nebulousness of the Piscean energy, to get clear, we need to sometimes be a bull in a china shop. Before we really know how to do it in a refined way, sometimes we're going to do it in a very like ungraceful way. And Eris gives us permission to be ungraceful. It's like sometimes we just get fed up and we just need to do it and just be like, ah, just get pissed off.
Yeah.
Let the chips fall where they may. If we need to apologize or something afterward, that's fine. But you know what? Sometimes that's necessary to break us out of complacency, to break us out of entropy, to break us out of where we become too placated or too caretaking rather than caring.
Mhm.
And so she literally is the permission to just be who we are. And ultimately, then Eris becomes refined into just a really strong inner radar for bullshit, not just other people's bullshit, but for my own, right? And lovingly, because Eris, believe it or not, she loves play. All she wants to do is play. She sees life as play. And so everything that is like dour where we're taking ourselves too seriously, or self-importance, or, it's all about me. She's just like, F that. You know what? It's all play. So she's a very, which can be disruptive to the ego that wants to be serious, that wants to be important, that wants to matter. And of course we all matter, but at a much deeper level. And if we are looking for validation from the outside and we
Yes.
don't have it within us, Eris is like, it starts here first. So she's the part of the cycle where Venus is invisible, farthest from Earth.
Mhm.
We've been taken out of, you know, brought out of our illusions of relating and what they're supposed to mean, and out of the social context. Because when Venus, for people who were born when Venus was invisible around here, when she was direct, it's often there's a sense of isolation. There's a sense of either fuck everybody, I'm just going to do my own thing, but there's a sense of real like sadness or grief around that's unmetabolized living there. Or it can be where I cater too much to what other, like I mirror too much how other people relate, because I don't have a good sense of what relating looks and feels like to me. But
Right.
the initiation of this is to discover my own relationship with my center, because this is again where Venus and the sun is. And what I love about Eris and where she was discovered, because I look at all these goddesses' discovery chart to tell me a lot about their significance for us collectively. Eris was discovered retrograde at 19 degrees of Aries, which is the sun's exaltation degree.
Wow.
So
Wow.
she has this beautiful kind of masculine, feminine, solar energy around her, where she just wants to be who and what she is anytime. And that can change. The freedom to change, because that's Aries too. One moment can be different from the next. Where am I compartmentalizing myself? And by the time we've been surrendering through Demeter Ceres and we get here, this can be an opportunity to play around, to discover
Yeah.
who and what I am. And that I can be different in each moment. And I'm a being who is so much more than just my personality and what I've told myself I am, and the labels and the roles that I play.
Yeah. And I love it because in your drawing, if we look at this, this is a bit of a splayed image, right? When we look kind of at the depth of where Eris is sitting, it is the point of pleasure, right? It's like if we look at this as like a woman's legs, or the shape, even if we look at the energy as it would bounce through the bowl, right?
Yeah.
This sits down just right down in there, which makes me think that this is during this Venus retrograde. This is not a passive retrograde.
No.
It is really not. And that, like you said, the bullshit meter, where am I been looking for validation and it's literally killing me? Where do I have that feminine rage that needs to happen because it's raw and
Yes.
it's instinctual, or what am I pretending to be at peace with, right? All of that gets an opportunity to kind of come up, and it leaves room for that play, that pleasure.
Yes.
Not play nice because it's the thing to do. Don't play nice because it makes me comfortable, but to play, to
Yes.
receive pleasure, to have pleasure in Aries, the physical body, you
Yes.
know. And in our own charts, I think wherever your Eris is at, right? Like whatever house, because it's going to be in the same sign for all of us, but whatever house it's in, I think remembering that this is soft, and Eris doesn't come along and break down what's already whole. It's
Right.
not an Eris energy. It breaks what's false.
Mm-hmm.
What's right? Because I don't know if Eris next is naturally like seeking chaos.
No,
Like,
right.
right? I don't think Eris is like, oh, let me stir this a little bit, right? It's more like, no, listen, it's already here.
Yes,
Here.
exactly.
I'm just gonna
Exactly.
show you where you don't have wisdom around it. So let's cut the shit and get it out of the way.
You got it. You got it. It's so it's like we look at everything through the lens of discomfort, indicating where we are not playing together,
Yeah.
right? Where we're all playing in separate sandboxes, or we think we're in a separate sandbox, but the reality is we're all in one sandbox. Eris is kind of like, hey, we're all in one sandbox, that's kind of her energy. And if people are interested in looking into more of, there is a religion which is not a religion, which is a religion called Discordianism, which is hilarious. And there's this book called Principia Discordia. And I have found, no disrespect to people who have written about Eris, but in my experience of Eris, she's on my North Node with Chiron, actually. In my experience of her, they capture her essence so well. Like she's paradox, she's ridiculousness, she is like, which is wholeness. Wholeness can
Mm,
accommodate paradox. It can
absolutely.
accommodate multiple truths. And so Aries is just the clarity of what is my truth in this moment, in this moment, in this moment, in this moment, in this moment.
Mhm.
And the capacity to play around and not be so stuck with it's this or it's that or it's that.
Yeah, it's both and,
Yes.
right? And I
Yes.
think this is so cool to see it in this lens and think about how we can take the astrology to our bodies because our bodies remember way before our minds do. So
Mm-hmm.
bringing this retrograde, you guys, down to your hips, down to your belly, that's the wisdom is held there.
Yes.
It's held there. This is, I don't think that this is an intellectual retrograde, right?
Mm-mm.
I think that this is where you were looking at, or maybe being guided to look at where we're not being asked to be small or nice or just soft. We're just asking to move with some ease towards this wholeness that you're talking about.
You
And
got
the
it.
wholeness is a bit fierce. It is a bit untamed. More than anything, I suppose what I'm really getting and thinking about how we can all heal with this is that the war, Aries, is not outside. It's not.
Right.
It's
No.
it's it's within. This one's within. But we're not going in there with the blowtorch. We're gonna go in there with a nice gentle flame, be like,
Right.
that was BS over there, or you know what I mean? Just like thinking about even just those gentle questions in the body. Like, where have I been taught to apologize for my own existence in some
I
way?
love that. And Stormy, what you're bringing up too is like the idea of being soft or the practice of being soft is to let our natural boundaries manifest,
Hmm.
not the boundaries that are true. And so I love that. Like, so for those of us who tend to be more valenced in our masculine, softening and more feminine counterbalancing things could be supportive. For those of us who are more in our feminine, making choices that are more from a place of just experimenting and trying without trying to like make sure everything is safe before I do it, like to not have certainty be the guide, that could really bring us into more balance. So everything is just a matter of coming into balance. It's not preferencing one thing or another, right? And that's another beauty of Eris's teachings because she's a feminine energy and a masculine sign. It's just like we are both. We are some form of the spectrum of both.
Yeah.
And so where can I experiment more with supporting the holding through being in the gym, you could say, with where I am not as familiar.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Yeah, this is just making me think, like, even as this is going on for us, we're going to have some slides here from Andrea so that you guys can look through this, learn a little bit more about it. And I think I'm going to throw in some questions that you can go through just in the body as
Hmm.
well, because the Venus Reset program is there. But I want to give you some little things just for the Venus retrograde to mesh here with what Andrea is sharing with us to look at. What is a practical question? You can just put your hand on your own hips, on your own bowl, and ask the question and see what your body tells you. What is your
Hmm.
body telling you? Where are you needing to soften because you're not in your power? You're forcing something, you're tense, you're tight about something. And how can we use the astrology to move through that?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
this is so much. I feel like we've covered a lot.
We haven't even gotten to the evening star, but that's
I
okay.
know,
It's
right?
a
Like we didn't even
yeah.
get there, and it's just like,
Yeah, yeah, I know.
wow.
It's very rich, and I'm appreciating your questions and your and what you're adding to it because it is so rich and there's so yeah. And it's not the kind of thing that you want to rush through. So I'm appreciating that you are what you're bringing and you're offering to it, because it really kind of helps to steep and sit in what we've already shared so far. So
Which is and it's interesting you're saying that too, because what I find with Venus and Mars retrogrades the same, right? We're getting ready for them, and it's like, okay, we're going to have this retrograde cycle. And I really think that even I'm guilty of it. It's like, okay, it'll be intense, but like kind of not a big deal. And then we get midway through any one of those two retrogrades, and it's like, WTH, right? Like the real frustration or the real fear builds then, and we're like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be focusing on
mm, mm,
the blank thing. In the beginning, I don't always think it's as evident.
right. No, that's beautiful. And it's normally because, it's like, well, any retrograde is, especially with the inner planets, including Mars, it's generally a loop or a Z, depending on where it is, like how close Mars is or whatever planet is to its nodes. But so there's a sense of, lateral movement, not just longitudinal movement. So there's this almost this place of an alembic, which is a container for alchemy to happen. So it's like it's giving us space, and like you say, fear can come up, which is great because fear just shows us where our edges are, right? It shows us where we're not excited yet. So if we're not feeling fear, that might even be just more dissociation. So
Right.
feeling fear is good. It's not comfortable, but again, these are opportunities to let the fear, what is beneath the fear? What is the wisdom waiting to be birthed through the capacity to learn that I can stay with the fear, because that's just an initiation threshold, and the beauty and the richness and the depth of situating myself more deeply in myself when I have moved through the fear and not believed the stories that come up around the fear. That shows us the feminine power. That's the power of deepening into our feminine capacity to welcome our experience and trusting that it's arising for our own benefit. It's not against us.
Yeah, that the whole cycle is actually an energetic conspiracy to have us be the very best.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
What a beautiful thing. So I know we didn't get deep into the evening star, but I want to maybe wrap us up by let's go through that because I want you guys to have the full cycle, a full
Yeah.
meal deal to see where we've been torn down and we're coming back up and how it all fits together.
Beautiful. Okay. Yeah, because as you'll see, I mean, even though the drawing here doesn't indicate it, but the Venus cycle is symmetrical. That's the feminine principle, right? It's pi, it's the Fibonacci sequence. It's the idea of balance and harmony in nature. So that's why one of the reasons too why each of these asteroid goddesses or dwarf planets has a mirror and the opposite side of the cycle. So here we have Demeter Ceres again encouraging us to embody relationally what we have gained as a result of losing parts of ourselves that are just temporal, right? Aspects of our personality, but not who we are at our core. So with the help of Eris and moving through here, now the sun astronomically is starting to slowly move back closer and closer to Earth. This is the farthest that this is Venus moving in direct motion, farthest from Earth. So now she's slowly starting to increase in brightness. So this is a Venus now that just after sunset, she starts to be visible, and increasingly over 5.5 months. Right now, where we are collectively, while this is being recorded, Venus next week is going to be at her maximum brightness as an evening star, which I correlate with Hera and Juno. And Hera, again, is the Greek form of Juno. She's the queen of heaven. She is Jupiter's equal. She has, and again, in this slides, you'll see what some of the attributions I put to Juno. But in essence, when we're really in a more coherent form of Juno, she is the capacity to be sovereign in ourselves, which means having an appreciation for where and an intimacy with where I am in alignment and where I'm out of alignment, but I am first. I'm not focusing on where I'm out of alignment. I'm not focusing on where I'm in alignment. I am me first, whoever the me is, before the various parts of me, so that I can hold in my heart, hara, pelvic bowl, and head that congruence. So it's sovereignty, which is I am honest with where I'm at. No more, no less. I don't need to be any more or less. And am I safe to demonstrate that in me and shine my light visibly and let other people and see other people and appreciate their light that's different from me, which is again very Aquarian in that sense, right? Where we are free to be who we are intrinsically, not threatened by other people who might be different in how they express. And how can we co-create together through our differences? Because it's the differences that really create, well, that's the foundation of creativity. It's not homogeny, right? There has to be some differentiation. The 1 + 1 = 3. That third thing that can only be birthed by my genius and your genius coming together. That is the Hera Juno in her own sovereignty, in our own sovereignty.
Which is
So
a
then,
big deal with Juno, because Juno, as I have understood it, has so much to do with commitment too. Right. So through, I feel like through the journey of what we're learning and we're answering and we're coming to that place of wholeness and letting the sacred bowl be open to receive, it's coming from a place of wholeness where it's like, I am committed to being fully this. This is who I am, but I am committed to the fullness of this. Whether, like you're saying, it's in alignment with what society says it should be, or what I've been told I'm supposed to think, because anything less than that I think would be a reflection of living versions that are keeping us small, which is what
yeah,
we're trying to move away from. So I really see that sense of commitment to staying full and open and ready to receive the world around me, but through the lens of this is what I'm truly committed to.
I love that, because she is the goddess of commitment and partnership in the chart. She can indicate also where we are most prone to projecting onto others what we are not available to receive in ourselves. She's the version of Venus that is the true mirror. And so the true mirror for us ultimately is our soul. The soul and self-identity merged is the lover, is the beloved, because she's also very much about the beloved, right? And so I love what you're saying. She's the commitment to wholeness. Ultimately, wholeness is the dance, the ever shifting dance between personality and soul. And that can be reflected in how we partner with other people. So she can be, Juno can represent where we are out of alignment in terms of how we view relationships hierarchically, like kind of where we're always sussing ourselves in the pecking order. And in coherent Juno, she's like true collaboration and partnership on all levels, right? Whether it be business, whether it be
Yeah.
personal romantic, or whether it just be person to person, right? Appreciating our uniqueness.
Yeah. That's really powerful to see it through the Juno lens too, just the partnership and thinking about, how does your womb, how do your bones respond when you're next to someone or you're in a particular partnership, whatever that partnership is, like you said, business, romance, higher power, right? Wherever we have these partnerships, is there this like tightening? Is there this numbness? Like, is
Yes.
there a story that comes up? Because that bowl as a vessel
Yep.
is speaking.
Very good. Yeah. It's so, I love that you're excited, because everything, all of this lives within the pelvic bowl. And so becoming slowed down enough,
Yeah.
even though Venus is moving very fast during a retrograde, it's paradoxical in a sense. So her fast movement when she's retrograde, which is also when she's direct, like whenever she's getting closest to the sun, that's when she's moving fastest, either retrograde or direct. But it's interesting, we can still be slow. It's just that when we slow down, we are able to change, we're able to receive changes much more quickly and efficiently.
Yeah. And
So
I feel
even
like
though
in the Aries, there's not a choice.
right, exactly, right.
It's like the gate is open, go
Yeah,
through and remember who you are.
exactly. There's a really interesting video that I saw recently, Stormy, about when someone accelerated a car going really, really, really fast. And at one point, it just looked like the car was stationary because it was moving that fast.
Wow.
So that's the paradox of like when we're slowed down enough, we can be moving. It's like when we're slowed down internally, a lot can be happening, but we don't have to process it all with our that we are able to metabolize the energy according to our own unique wiring. That's the paradox of the both and.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. 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 Okay. So
So
we've met Juno along the journey as well.
yes. And so now we have this is when she stations retrograde, which is going to happen March 1st, right? For us. And this is when this is again more of a Pallas Athena Minerva energy. And again, this is just the Greek and the Roman name for the goddess. So again, retrogradation. So there's this idea of parthenogenesis. Where am I bringing back home everything that I've learned to finally receive what is mine, what is not? It's also Pallas Athena was the mentor. She was the strategist for Jason, for Hercules, for a lot of the Greek, the major dudes. And even though she could fight herself, she was the one who could see the bigger picture. So she would be able to say, this is the best strategy for this and whatnot. So it's the strategic kind of coming in to
Mhm.
where is coming from the big picture now, coming back to the simplicity. Where, if I've lost myself
Yeah.
in
Wow.
the complexity, where do I bring it back to what's simple? And again, this is the mentor. So this is often kind of like this is kind of loosely Aquarius, and this is the Piscean energy of where am I now, the grandmother energy? Where am I the one that just kind of holds the space for, the youngsters? And oftentimes in indigenous cultures, the really young ones and the old ones spend most time together because they
Yeah.
have this kind of Piscean, the new ones that are coming from the Alembic, who are learning how to differentiate, and then the older ones who are going back into the undifferentiated, but paradoxically still retaining their soul's learning, their unique soul's learning from the whole experience. So Pallas Athena as the mentor, this can also be the energy of, again, mentoring others, releasing having to do it all myself and trusting that, I can just be a mentor to those who will take what I have, my legacy, and build upon it. So there's this sense of like coming into ownership of what is mine and what is no longer mine to do through this completion retrograde that brings us again back in. And Hestia is the Greek. I forgot to put this here, but the energy of Vesta, she is the flame that never goes out. So to me, she represents the fundamental essence of what we are, not who we are, but what we are. She is the burning away of everything that is not what we are.
Oh,
You could
brilliant.
say, yeah. So this is the ending, which is also the beginning, which is what I love about the Venus cycle, how she turns retrograde as an evening star and then moves up and shoots up retrograde and then stations direct. It's the energy of endings and beginnings are deeply interconnected, life and death.
Yeah.
Like you said beautifully in the beginning, the feminine is creation and destruction at the same time. Because the very end of one cycle is the seeding moment of the next.
Which is so fascinating because it's almost this combination, thinking about Paulus and the Vesta energy as well, where it's like, I remember hearing a story that while Mars was happy to fight with pretty much everyone, he did respect Paulus's hustle. He was like, okay, you do have good strategy. So in this role, there's kind of this, and I'm thinking about that Mars is direct but out of bounds as this is all going on. So kind of seeing this Paulus energy being both that the warrior strategist, but also a fair amount of a diplomat, but bringing in the conception of Vesta where it's the fire there's a
Yeah.
conversation here about I am not going to waste my fire on fruitless battles. That ain't
Right.
it. That ain't it.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And letting
Yep.
that breath deepen, letting the body relax into magnetism. I'm seeing the hips falling just open, no bang, no force, no push. And how as we move with this, could those be experiences we start to physically have that show us what the Venus retrograde and the full Venus cycle essentially is bringing into our wisdom about our own bodies.
Yes. And I love the thing about cycles too, is that they're all about a planet's relationship with the sun, the solar force. And
Mhm.
that's to me what is, because if we look at the sun, it's the cohering force of our solar system. Equally, it is the cohering force of our chart, of our being. So this is about our relationship, various degrees of relationship, coming, going, discovering, learning. We're not supposed to do this right, everybody. We're supposed to, this is about learning. We're learning about ourselves, right? And so it's how much of my, the way that I hold it, the sun is again our already awakened, enlightened, coherent love, radiance, clarity, compassion, awakened nature. And Venus, as the feminine, is the facet of our psyche that receives that values that reflects that. And so it's how much are we available to make our center priority and live that and value that and shine it unapologetically. And so all of these goddesses are additional support to remember. And there's something about the power of the dark sun too. In the Mayan cosmology, the jaguar represents its spots represents the midnight sun. So how the sun is always alive even when we can't see it. It's always there, and it's like referencing it inwardly. That is the beauty of Venus, is like remembering, because before Venus is Libra, she's Taurus, substantiating in our own, being resourced in our own solar light, in our own compass, which is the sun.
This is brilliant. I just feel like this has been brilliant. You guys, as you're listening, hopefully you put this on podcast style and you're just hearing some of the medicine that is coming through, but certainly seeing how these different asteroid goddesses take us beyond just that aesthetic place that we can leave Venus sometime. But that is as equally important, because what's happening on the inside is a reflection that's what's going on the outside as well. But I think that while this retrograde is not for the faint of heart, right? Because I do think there is a fair question, a fair fire to be
Yeah.
looked at. I think approaching it by bringing in the asteroid goddesses the way you've done, to me, kind of hands us an opportunity to realize like the war in our own femininity is over. It is an
Yeah.
opportunity during this
Oh,
retrograde time, always, but certainly during the retrograde time, to come back to remember so that we can arise whole, you know,
yeah.
remember how to act, how to behave in alignment with our own feminine dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this is powerful. I think that you brought something just really beautiful, and I thank you for that. And I hope this helps you guys through your retrograde experience to reflect. Remember your
Mm-hmm.
fire, remember your wisdom. Remember that when you got up this morning, whether or not you got a paycheck, whether or not you fed the cat, when you opened your eyes, you were whole, holy, divine, and valuable just in your creative being. And to
Mm.
remember who the fuck you are, right? Like,
I love that you swear as much as I do, Stormy. Really refreshing. Yes, yes,
because
great.
from there, I think we can do a lot with this retrograde besides just say, oh my God, all my money's going to run away. My ex is coming back. Now I have to deal with
Right.
it again. The things may happen, right? But Venus doesn't let you forget who you are, and with some compadres, like, the band of merry ladies. Here. We
Yes.
have an opportunity to walk through, I think,
Yes.
some really, really different gates, and we're not going to do it by fighting. We're just doing it by reclamation and acknowledgement.
And if I can say one last thing, it's that each one of us, based on where our Venus was in the 19-month cycle at our birth, one of these ladies is your co-pilot, archaic avatar is what I call them. So you can determine based on where your Venus was in the larger cycle, and I'm sure Stormie could help you with that, but it's just, you will have one of these goddesses as an extra support. And so you can identify her qualities based on the document that I will have for you all here, and really bring in that added support for your Venus. You can discover, and she'll be your avatar for your whole life.
Oh, that's brilliant. And and even beyond that as well, for everyone, when you get these slides, I encourage you to grab your chart and just go to each of these asteroids and understand where yours is at, or what is it trying to bring to your attention. How do you know if it's in balance, out of balance? Because the very best astrology, I tell you guys this all the time, but the very best astrology is your astrology. So grab your charts.
Exactly.
We've got slides for you. We're both available for consultation if that's something that you need, but we just want to provide you a space to get in here, get your fingers a little pruny in your own being, your own fire. So, Andrea, thank you so much for coming and talking and sharing and musing.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for bringing the great questions and your energy and the space. I love, this is the kind of thing that I relish, these kinds of conversations with other women. And so really, it's been an honor. Thank you very much.
And you guys, I'm also going to put in the description box down below where you can find Andrea to just go more into her work, into any place you can find her. Because listen, she's just out here putting out good medicine. So make sure you check it out. And if you feel called, if you are listening to her, or the sound of her voice or her vibe is calling to you, I always encourage you to find your teachers, mentors, healers, path guides, soulmates. Go and do it. So if that's you, I'll make sure that you're able to find her. All right, everybody, check out these videos at the end if you have not had enough. If you've not had enough just yet, check out these videos at the end. We're going to keep the Venus conversation going, especially while we're going through the Venus retrograde, but also just Venus in general. Make sure, if you are ready, if you are feeling like your energy is stuck, if you are feeling sad, if you are feeling blocked, the Venus Reset program is 22 easy, beautiful days of unlocking that sacred bowl with Venus, and I would invite you to it. And it's in the description box down below. All right, you guys, we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.